Hey guys, welcome back. So in this video, we're going to be working with Leetcode problem number 20. And in this problem, we're going to be looking at valid parentheses. And so the whole idea is that if you ever coded, you know that there's going to be opening parentheses and closing parentheses, opening squiggly lines, closing squiggly lines, opening square bracket, and closing square brackets. And so whenever you use those, you need to make sure that you open and close them in the correct order. And so an opening and closing, like automatically they go together. If you open a squiggly lines, they automatically go together. And even when you're coding, if you happen to use the squiggly lines or the parentheses or the square brackets inside, you have to make sure that they close each other in the correct order. And so you can't have something like this where you have inside of these two opening and closing parentheses, you just have an empty opening bracket. That's not possible. You need to make sure that you complement it with a closing one, and then you call the closing parentheses. And so hopefully that made sense. That's kind of the concept that we're working with here, where we're going to return a Boolean value if the string that we have, the string of characters that we have, is valid, then we're going to return true. If it's not valid, like in this case, we're going to return false. Over here, we see the closing doesn't match the opening doesn't match the closing, and so we know that's not correct right away. And so that's the whole idea behind this algorithm. And I actually have a Google Doc open with copied some of the examples over, but the first thing we want to do is first handle the base cases. And so if length of s is equal to 1, we're going to return false. Because in that case, we know that whether it's opening or closing, there's nothing corresponding with it. So we already know that's going to be false. And the next thing we want to do, I'm going to make a dictionary called parens. And what this is going to be a dictionary with the keys being the closing parentheses and the values being the opening parentheses. And so it's going to look like this, where the keys are the opening values, the opening brackets, and the opening parentheses, and the values are going to be the closing parentheses. For this one, is going to be the square bracket, opening square bracket. Ooh, this gets a little wonky. Okay, and the value will be the opening square bracket, and then we also have the squiggly, and then the closing squiggly. And so that is, I believe, everything. We have our parentheses here, we have our square brackets here, and then we also have our squiggly lines here. And so that's going to be what our dictionary is going to consist of. So we can use this dictionary and access it whenever we need to. I'm also going to create an array called open. And so what this is going to hold, the opening parentheses that we come across. And so whenever we're traversing the string, if we come across an opening, it seems I spelled this wrong. If we come across an opening parentheses like the square bracket or the squiggly line or something like that, we're going to store in this array, and we're going to pop off the array as we need to. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say for paren in s. So what I'm doing is I'm looping through every parenthesis inside this string. If paren in parens dot values open dot append paren. So all this is doing is in a dictionary we have a key value pair, and so in Python to access the keys we do the dictionary name dot keys. If we want to access the values, which are the second values in the key value pair, if we want to access those, we do dot values. And so since our opening brackets are in the values, we're going to say if the paren is inside the paren dot values, we're going to append it to our open array. And so now else, so in this case we know that we have a closing bracket, right? And so what I'm going to do is now we want to check if our closings match our openings. And so first I'm going to say if len open is equal to 0, we're going to return false. And I think that'll make a little more sense after why I did that first. Let me actually move all this down, and I think it'll make a little more sense why I did that after. First, let me get to the other statements, other conditions, and I'll explain that one after. And then elif open -1 is not equal to paren paren, we want to return false. So this is probably the situation that is easiest to understand. This is saying that if in our open dictionary we have in our open array we have, say, 2 opening parentheses, and we came across a closing parentheses that was a square bracket like that. We're comparing the open -1 returns the very last character or very last item inside our array. And so we're saying if that array, if this item is not equal to the value of the key value pair of this key inside the parens dictionary. So what we're doing is we're first searching the dictionary and we're looking at, okay, so this is our key. That means our value is going to be this. That means that this is the corresponding opening parentheses with our closing parentheses, the right one that we're looking for. But since this is not equal to the end over here, then we know that those don't match, right? And so that means that we can just return false right there because we have an opening and a closing in the correct order that don't match each other, and so we're just going to return false. The last situation is we're going to open dot pop. And so this situation is like we had before. Say we have our open array with 2 opening parentheses, and we came across a closing parenthesis that was the correct corresponding. So we traverse the dictionary, we see that, oh, for this key, we need this value, and this value is equal to the last item of the open array, which is this. So this is equal to this one. Since that's true, what we're going to do, I'll do this. What we're going to do is we're going to pop off our open array. And so that's going to remove the very last item in our array. And so it's just going to leave something like this. Or actually, to make it a little easier to understand, if this was our initial open array, we pop off the last item, and we're left with an opening square bracket. And so that's the situation where our closing and opening do match each other. And so now the reason, coming back to the first if statement, the reason I do this is if we get to a situation where our open array actually I probably shouldn't do that. I'll say our open array is empty, right? If our open array is empty, the length is going to be 0. And if we came across a closing parentheses, but our open array was empty, that means that we had more closing parentheses than we had opening parentheses. And so we know there's a mismatch right there. And so we can just remove the we can return false because we know that there's a mismatch in the number of opening and closing brackets, and because of that, we're not able to get a correct combination of, or a valid combination of, the closing and openings, and so in that case we can just return false. And so hopefully that made sense. In the very end, what we're going to say is we're going to return len open is equal to 0. So why are we doing this? What can happen in end case scenario is that if we loop through everything and we get to a point where we've looped through everything, we went through all the closing parentheses, but our open array still has say a closing and still has an opening parentheses, right? We looped through the whole array, we canceled out all the closings with the openings, but there's still one opening parentheses left over. That means there were more opening parentheses than closing parentheses. And in that case, we know that there was a mismatch right there. This string is invalid, and so we're going to return false. And so the way we're going to return false is that we're going to check if the length of our open array is equal to 0. If it is, that means there was an equal amount, everything canceled out fine, and so we're going to return true. If we do have something left in our open array, we're going to return false because the length is going to be equal to is not going to be equal to 0, so that's going to return false. And so I'll just go over this one more time just to make sure. If the paren is in the paren.values, we're going to append to our open array. If it's a closing bracket, we're first going to check to see if the length of our open array is 0. If it is, that means we have more closing brackets than opening brackets. We're going to return false. If we get to a point where in our very last opening bracket is, if that's not compatible with the next closing bracket that we encountered, if those don't cancel each other out, then we're going to return false because that can't be allowed. And if they do cancel each other out, we're just going to pop off the open array and move on to our next parentheses in our string, or whatever the case may be. And so that is hopefully that makes sense. Let me actually remove some comments to clean this up a little. That's how we can code up this is valid function. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna quickly copy this here. And we'll run it after. Let me copy this. Actually, I'll just write it here. Create our open array. Oh, I should call it open. I'll say opening p for open parentheses. And so what I'm going to say is for paren in S, if paren in parens dot values, we're going to append to our array. Else, if len open p is equal to 0, return false. Elif open p -1 is not equal parens paren, return false. Else open dot pop. At the very end, we are going to return len open p is equal to 0. So let me just make sure we have everything here. We have our parentheses, we have our array, we have appending to our open array, removing from our open array if need be, checking our brackets and parentheses, at the very end returning this. So I'm going to run the code, and hopefully this will work well. Has no, oh, I typed this wrong, open p. Okay, so this returns true, that's good. We'll run this test case here. Hopefully that will return false. And then that returns false. And then we can run this one. Okay, so those ran fine. Let's run on our Leetcode thing, and this ran. So that's how you can code up the isValid function for Leetcode. Hopefully this helped you guys, and see you guys in the next one. All right, later.